Okay, this video is for doing professional high-quality kerfing for circular architectural work. I saw a lot of really terrible repairs, past repairs on my porch project when I was working on it. It's a circular porch. The house was built in 1895, and there's a lot of circular work that I had to fix because it was rotted or because it was done so poorly in the past as a repair. Some of that was just cutting from flat stock, cutting a big round circular piece that I needed for a porch railing or whatever. But I did have to kerf a lot of flat boards so that they'd wrap around the porch, and also moldings and whatever. So what I saw from previous repairs was that people had just taken out their circular saw, cut a bunch of cuts in the back just randomly, with no care about if there was too many or they were too shallow or they were too deep or whatever. And that really makes a totally inferior product. It's basically hollow in the back. It's not like solid wood anymore. It can split and can do just, it's not the way to go. So I'm going to show you how to properly kerf boards for fine architectural work. This is really the way it should be done, and it's not too hard. You have to make a few calculations that I'll show you how to do. Let's go through the calculations to see how we figure out how many kerf cuts to make. So we're going to just assume a project like my porch, which has a 7-foot radius in that circular portion. That means the diameter would be 14 feet, twice the radius, and in inches that is 168 inches. Now that would be the outside surface of the board. Now if we're using a 3/4 inch board, then the inside surface is going to be shorter because the radius, instead of 7 feet, it'll be 7 feet minus 3/4 of an inch, and that times 2 for the diameter would be 13 feet 10 1/2 inches. So it's going to be 3/4 of an inch times 2. Subtract that from 14, you get 13 foot 10 1/2, which is 166 1/2 inches. Now we have to calculate the circumference, which is circumference is pi times diameter. So for the outside diameter, it is pi. We're going to use 3.1416 times the diameter of 168 inches, and that equals 527.78 inches, and we're going to say that's approximately equal to 527 3/4 of an inch. The inside circumference, also pi times diameter, pi times a diameter of 166.5 is 523 and 0.08, and that's approximately equal to 523 inches and 1/16. So we're obviously not going to have a board that's 527 inches long, but we're going to cut some segment of that, and then we want to know how many kerf cuts to make in that segment. So for our example, we are only going to need the ratio of the inside and the outside lengths, and we can use that ratio for any length board that we're going to cut. So we want to divide 523 and 1/16 of an inch divided by 527 3/4, and that turns out to be 99.11%. That means that the inside circumference is 99.11% the size of the outside circumference. Now we can use that ratio. We'll just keep that in our calculator. It's going to go out to many more digits than that. But if we know that we've got a 5-foot long board, that's 60 inches, and we multiply that by that ratio, 99.11%, and we get 59.46 inches, and let's just say that's roughly 59.5 inches. So we know for that 5-foot long board, the inside is going to be shorter than the outside by a ½ inch. It's going to go from 60 inches on the outside, 59.5 inches on the inside. So how do we do that? We know that, get a new piece of paper here. We know that the saw that I'm using has a kerf of a 32nd of an inch, and so I use calipers to measure the saw kerf, and I've already found that it is 1/32 of an inch. You want really small blade to do this, so to get the very best quality. Now you can already see why doing it with a circular saw is crazy, because you might have, a 1/4 inch saw kerf, and that's way too big. So, well, maybe it's not going to really be that big on a circular saw, but it's going to be way more than 1/32 of an inch. So what we will do, we know that we need to take away, we need that inside to be a ½ inch shorter than the outside. So we divide a half an inch by 1/32 of an inch. You measure your saw kerf and you plug in that number. And what we get is 0.5 divided by 0.03125. That's a 32nd of an inch. And it's approximately equal to 17, very close to 17. And what we do is we round that up one number, so we get 18. So that means we're going to be making 18 cuts, 18 kerfs on a 5-foot board. And what we do is we want to know, we divide 60, that's the length of the board, by 18, and we get 3 1/3 inches, which is roughly the same as 3 5/16. So we'll make a saw kerf every 3 5/16 on that board, and when we're done, the inside will be ½ inch shorter than the outside, which will make it a 7-foot radius or a 14-foot diameter, and it'll be perfect, and it'll be almost like solid wood when it's bent, because all the inside corners will compress together. The outside will be one smooth thing, and it is going to be the perfect 7-foot radius piece of wood. So let's show you the process for that. Okay, I've got some marks on this piece of wood. It's 3/4 inch thick, 5 feet long, and it's 1.5 inches tall. I've made marks every 3 5/16, so I just draw a line. And when it comes to the wood that you use for this, you want something that's clear, no knots in it, and relatively even grain, nothing too curly or crazy. You're probably going to be using pine, but this will work for most woods. You might have to cut really deep for a hardwood, so it'll bend enough for you. But this is what you do. And I don't know if this seems like a lot of work to you, but if you do this and you do it right, then this is the last time you'll have to do this in your lifetime. Now, one way of shortcutting this is, now that I've got some marks on there, I can just transfer that to a piece of paper, use my last one,
as a mark, as a gauge, and then draw that and that. And just it speeds things up a little bit. So go down the board, and with any luck and careful measurement, this will end up to be perfect, and in fact it is. Okay, so now I just have to make this nice and square. Now you don't you can't just use any kind of random angle, because the thing will end up twisting a little bit on you. So nice square marks, nice square cuts. I had a kind of an abortive attempt at measuring this off. I was losing track, and so I've got a couple of marks on some of these areas here, and it is a little bit confusing. Let's just check that with our gauge, make sure these are all on target. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, just visually I can see that they look evenly spaced, and we're ready for our next thing. And the next thing is we have to know how deep to cut. Now this wood, I have taken a little piece of 1/8 inch wood of this stock, and it bends. I want to go a little deeper than 1/8 inch. Okay, so I've got my marking gauge set, and this is the back side we're going to kerf. The front of it is how much of the stock is left. So we just go along here and make our mark with our marking gauge all the way along that face as a reference. And that's going to tell us how deep to cut our kerfs. And even if it's not, if it's a little bit plus and a little bit minus, it's still going to work out really well. There's a lot of accuracy here, and there's also a lot of forgiveness. So you could even, if you're good at this, you could just kind of use your finger as a gauge and mark it off with a pencil. I'm going to go this route because sometimes I drift on that. Now I don't know if you can see this, but I've got there's one knot in this whole board, and it's right here. And that's not going to be on the inside, so that's good, and it's not where a kerf occurs, so it's not going to hurt anything at all. But if you had a knot on the front edge, the side that's going to be in tension, things could really crack right there at that knot. So you don't want to have, you definitely want nice clear stock, and if it's not completely clear, you got a knot somewhere, make sure it's on the inside compression side. Right, now it's just a matter of cutting the kerfs. You just take your line as guide, try to keep on the line, and also try to keep nice and square and vertical. And you cut down to about the line that you drew onto the edge, and you go on to the next one. Now for this piece of wood, I'm cutting 17 kerfs. Each one takes me, I don't know, 10-15 seconds. It goes by pretty quickly. Now what if this were a bigger board? This is obviously only 1.5 inches. But it could be a 1x12. It could be a 1x8. You do the same exact thing, and it's just maybe a little bit more sewing. but it goes fast enough. And you think you're going to save time by doing your stupid circular saw kerf. You're going to do so many more kerfs than this, and the result is inferior, and it's noisy, and it throws up a bunch of dust. This is better in every way you can imagine. So I don't know why anyone who's good at doing it this way would ever go back to the circular saw, power saw method. And I've just got a few more to do, and what we're going to do is take this outside, and since I used the diameter of my porch to calculate these kerfs, we're going to take this up onto my porch and hold it up there and see if we got the diameter right. Radius, I guess. 7-foot radius, 14-foot diameter. Now, one thing when you're working with bigger boards, I had this problem on the porch. I was kerfing 1x8s, and they get so floppy, and these are 12 feet long, you get so floppy and long that it was kind of brittle and dangerous, and I ended up like losing half of one at one point, so I had to make a couple of shorter segments. Anyway, you can see how this is kerfing very nicely now. Let's go up to the porch and compare it to our known 7-foot porch. Alright, we've got our board here. We've got the railing. A little more noise, we're outside now, so I'm going to clamp this. This railing here has a 7-foot radius. So if I clamp one end here, wrap it around here, spring in the middle here, and it conforms perfectly. I'll take you over there. It is tight to that radius. So the calculations worked. If you look at the kerfs themselves, they're closed up right to the surface, real tight, and then they open up as they get further back. So if you had to do an inside curve, like I did here, I had to do an inside curve up here for that quarter round you see, and that's kerfed in the front. So, but the saw marks are so small, you can you'd have to even get up very close to even know that they were there. But so they'll close down almost to nothing. If you look, I don't know, I lost my focus here, but you can see how the kerf on the inside closes off to nothing. It's still visible inside the board. There's a scratch here where I made the mark for cutting, and then the front surface is perfectly smooth. So that's the end of the kerfing video. That's how to do it correctly, and everything else you see is wrong, at least as far as I'm concerned. Thanks for watching.